Hello, in this video I'm going to show you a game in my Hiryu, which was the latest ship I've bought in World of Warships, Tier 7 Japanese aircraft carrier. The reason I'm showing you this game is because it illustrates very well the power of manual fighter attacks in this current patch of World of Warships. I mentioned in my Zuiho review that I did yesterday that manual fighter attacks have gotten very powerful suddenly, but I didn't actually demonstrate how or to what degree, so I thought I'd just put up this game just to show you that. It's not actually a particularly good game. If you look at the length of this video down the corner, you'll see the game doesn't actually last very long. It just doesn't last long enough for me to do a lot of damage. But you will see me using strafing attacks for my fighters very effectively to basically win air superiority. And the Hiryu is actually an interesting aircraft carrier for the Japanese, in that it's really the first aircraft carrier in the Japanese line that can actually contest air superiority in its own right. Basically, the one advantage this has over, I think, every other Japanese aircraft carrier is that this can put 8 aircraft up in the air, well, 8 fighter planes up in the air, I should say, while the American equivalent generally can only bring 6. So you see there that I'm fighting a Ranger in this game, and those 6 fighters would be the full fighter complement of the Ranger. At least the full fighter complement it can put up in the air at one time, whereas those 4 fighters there of mine are half of mine. So basically, if I keep my fighters together and we can engage it in an 8-on-6 fight, basically the Hiryu is actually going to be able to beat the Ranger in a fighter engagement, which kind of sucks for me because I've been, upgrading my Japanese aircraft carriers captains to really promote anti-aircraft fire, because that's how I've been winning air superiority up to this point. Whereas now I'm wishing I'd really been promoting my fighter effectiveness. But whatever, it's not that big a deal. I'll just have good anti-aircraft guns. Well, actually, having said that, the Hiryu actually has weaker anti-aircraft guns tier for tier than the aircraft carriers come out before. It's only a slight improvement over the Zuiho, but you go up a whole tier and aircraft become a lot harder to kill. Anyway, what you've seen happen so far in the game is that basically my fighters and the Ranger fighters are facing each other off on the far west of the map, while I've sent my bombers over into the east, where I've finally managed to discover a target worth attacking, this enemy battleship here. So I line up my torpedo bombers in a cross attack, and a single dive bomber squadron goes in with them. Well, I send squadron number 7 to just hang out behind the battleship, and I'll send them in later, hoping to do a lot of fire damage from their attack. But while I was doing that, the enemy Ranger sends its dive bombers in, and unfortunately I'm a bit too late to engage it with my fighters. So that wasn't really a great start to the fighter engagement. I had an opportunity to shoot down some enemy aircraft and wasn't able to capitalise on it. So I pull my fighters back and switch back over to see how my bombers are doing. Managed to start a fire on the battleship, and when I zoom in, it looks like it's actually put that fire out, which means that if I can start flooding here, its flooding is going to do a lot of damage. And I've got my second lot of dive bombers coming in because I'm expecting, one more fire will do a lot of damage. And unfortunately I get 2 fires there with the dive bombers, but my 3 torpedo strikes don't do any flooding damage. But it turns out something wasn't quite right there, because the battleship actually put out those fires very quickly, so maybe I was following a bit too soon and it still had its repair ability up. Anyway, the Rangers' fighters push forward, so I engage them with my fighters, and then I send Squadron 3 in to do a manual strafing attack over the enemy fighters. And, well, my fighters were actually holding their own there, but that strafing attack shot down basically, well, probably 3 of them in one go, which turned it from a 6-on-4 fight to a 1-on-1 fight. Unfortunately I still lost, partly because I was under anti-aircraft fire, but Group 3 was able to come in and finish off that fighter squadron. So that was an alright trade. I shot down 6 American fighters while losing 4 of my own. If I can keep up that rate of exchange, I will eventually win air superiority, because the Ranger and the Hiryu have basically the same number of aircraft. You can't really see it because it's a replay, but at the moment I'm just ordering my carrier somewhere different because a player is saying there are destroyers coming through the centre of the map. I didn't actually think that was true, because Well, I can see that destroyer there is not coming through the centre of the map, and I thought the other one was off on the far right, or the far east, but I decided not to risk it and instead relocate to kind of behind my main battle fleet on the east. And I've sent my fighters back to guard my fleet, and I'm trying to get Squadron 2 to go join it, just in case the enemy fighters show up. But I don't have the option, the enemy bombers show up instead, and it's my duty to go out there and disrupt their attack. So I order Squadron 3 after the torpedo bombers, because they are the bigger threat. And then seeing how the enemy bombers are grouped like this, I decided to go with another strafing attack. And that was 11 bombers shot down by 4 fighters in, well, probably 1 second, maybe 1.5 seconds. They got 1 torpedo off, and fortunately for them, well, unfortunately for us, that torpedo hit. Doing strafing attacks like that on bombers, it doesn't actually seem to have the panic effect. It doesn't disrupt their attack patterns. So that 1 torpedo still went straight and true and went straight on target, even though the plane that launched it died a split second later. At this point, I'm kind of confused. Well, not confused, I was undecided what to do. Squadron 3 is very low on ammunition, so I wanted to send them back to the carrier. But with the enemy fighters nearby, I wanted to have all 8 of mine here, even if it was only going to be for a short time, just in case they decide to push into my anti-aircraft support, where I felt comfortable engaging them. But well, after a time it becomes clear that they're not going to, so I order Squadron 3 back, which that delay was actually a bit of a mistake. There goes, I've just ordered Squadron 3 back to the carrier to rearm. And mainly because it takes me a while to get Squadron 3 back up, and as you'll see in a minute, it would have been very good to have them here shortly. And while I've been talking, I've ordered all my bombers to essentially go and just circle above those battleships. I'm just going to leave them there, hoping to kind of tempt the enemy fighters over our AA guns, or if not, if the fighters don't take the bait, I'll just charge straight through and hit the enemy battleship. And while my fighters are circling above my allied battleships, they actually spot some torpedoes coming in, which give my team a bit of early warning to dodge. And unfortunately they don't. Oh no, they do alright at dodging. I don't think any of those torpedoes hit, mainly because they were at very long range, but they didn't seem to react that much. Anyway, more dive bombers are coming in, so I've got my fighters in behind them, just doing a regular attack at this point, just because I want to disrupt the attack more than anything. And I was hoping the fighters would come in to engage my fighters, but they don't. I think about chasing them for a second, but decide it's not worth it. And here come enemy torpedo bombers. And now if I had have had Squadron 3 here as well, I would have actually felt comfortable engaging the enemy fighters there, just to try and shoot them down and help gain their superiority. But I don't, so instead I just focus on the bombers again, disrupt their attack, shoot down one of them, and then I pull back, and again the enemy fighters don't take the bait. And my allied battleship is actually sunk there by... Basically it looks like the enemy battleship and my battleship basically sunk each other. And I send Squadron 2 to engage the enemy fighters, while I send my bombers past it to try and hit this, well, AFK battleship. But the enemy only have 3 ships left, so I'm kind of happy getting what damage I can at this point. Basically, if I had had Squadron 3 up here now, I would have been able to wipe out that fighter squadron, the enemy fighter squadron, no problems, and my bombers would have had free reign. But instead, my fighters were about 20 seconds away from where they needed to be, and that was basically because I delayed for so long earlier on. But most of my bombers have managed to get through. We spot the enemy aircraft carrier and decide that's probably a better thing to target than the AFK battleship. So again, I send the torpedo bomber squadrons and 1 dive bomber squadron to attack the carrier immediately, and Squadron 7 just goes and hangs out behind the carrier until it becomes time for it to go in and do a manual attack. Squadron 4 comes in and launches their torpedoes, and Squadron 5's coming in at a bad angle. It's going to launch from directly behind it, but because they're under attack by fighters, I don't really bother adjusting their angle. Squadron 6 comes in, again it's at a bad angle, but I don't really bother adjusting it. Get 1 bomb hit and 2 torpedo hits, start to fire and flooding, but you're going to have to assume they're going to put those out quickly. And Squadron 5, despite being under fighter attack, also manages to land a torpedo on target. And unfortunately Squadron 7 is intercepted by the enemy fighters, so they launch their bombs wide and don't get any hits at all, which is disappointing. but nothing much we can do about it. Anyway, Squadron 3 has finally arrived, and I do a manual strafing attack on the fighters, kill 3 of them, and then engage a few torpedo bombers that were behind them and shoot down 2 more. Strafing attack done, I order them to chase down the remaining torpedo bombers. And Squadron 2's back up in the air and heading this way as well, but they'll be a little while before they arrive. Shoot down 1 more of the torpedo bombers before it drops its torpedoes, causes them to panic so they go wide, and none of them hit my allied cruiser there. And enemy dive bombers are taking off, so I fire away at the torpedo bombers for a little bit longer, shoot down 2 more, and then as the aircraft pass I switch to the enemy dive bombers, but ran out of ammunition just before engaging them. And Squadron 2's only about halfway there, so for a little while this cruiser is going to have to be fighting its own fighter cover. It actually takes a lot of damage there from those dive bombers, but the enemy ranger, well, it's dead, and that's game over. So the game only lasted 10 minutes, got 6 torpedoes, 4 bombs on targets, managed to shoot down 32 enemy aircraft, and the ranger only puts out 70 odd, 73 from memory, so I shot down a third, not actually more than a third of the 40% of their aircraft. Only did about 44,000 damage, but that's just because the game ended so quickly. But those manual attacks I did, I mean, they helped. The first one I did against the enemy fighter squadron actually wasn't really necessary. I could have engaged it with all 8 of my fighters at once and would have still won the battle. It would have just been a bit more even because the enemy destroyer was firing at us with anti-aircraft fire as well. But as it is, basically I lost 4 aircraft to kill 6 enemy, and that's a decent trade. The really decisive one was the manual attack against those 12 enemy bombers, where I managed to shoot down 11 of them, and 1 lost to Allied anti-aircraft fire, which basically ruined that attack, and it would have prevented the enemy aircraft carrier doing a lot of damage. I mean, 6 torpedoes and 6 bombs can be quite devastating if they all, or even if a significant portion of them manage to land on target. And then just at the end here, it was mainly the ability of strafing attacks to also hit 2 squadrons at once. I mean, I did it with hitting the 2 bombers at once, and I also did it at the end where I attacked the fleeing fighter squadron and also hit the torpedo bomber squadron as it was passing. And between the 2 of them, it allowed me to basically attack 2 squadrons at once, completely wiping out the fighters and destroying almost half the torpedo bombers. And the downside of those strafing attacks is that they are supposed to use a lot of your ammunition. But you see what, a single strafing attack loses 2/5, 40% of my ammunition, so you can easily do 2 of them with a single fighter squadron and then still fight a little bit at the end. So at least on the Hiryu, it's not actually that bad. I mean, the disadvantage of it isn't that huge a disadvantage, but you see, it just gives you so much extra firepower, and the ability to attack multiple squadrons at the same time is actually very powerful. And basically, if you're in a carrier at this patch, you should try and use them wherever it's possible, wherever it's going to give you an advantage. It just really helps you out. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video or found it useful, and I'll see you all next time.